AIA Chartered Architect, and for the last 18 years, Managing Director of agency Spring UK, a branding and communication agency that specialises in working in the built environment. I'm in the studio today with Lisa Rains of Pride Road to talk a little bit about the process of marketing your architectural practice. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Paul.
So tell us a little bit about Pride Road.
So Pride Road is an architectural practice franchise that specialises in turning houses into dream homes. We work exclusively with homeowners across the UK.
You use the word franchise there, and that's quite unusual in this context. Could you tell us a little bit about what that means?
So a franchise is a way of organising a business like McDonald's, Subway, or there's some other service industries out there where a business system is provided to you and you just have to operate that business in order to get a successful quality product.
So why did you think Pride Road would work as a franchise?
Well, it goes back to about 4 years ago. I set up my own business 5 years ago, Rains Architecture, and I was also serving as chairman of Women in Property Northwest, and I started to see the huge disparity between men and women across the industry. Going into architecture school, there's 50% male to female. When you go out into the industry, the numbers rapidly decline, so there's 30% female, and as you climb up in a company, the women just fall off a cliff. So I'd set up my business in the recession, and I've got 3 kids, and actually what I'd established was a business that actually did have that work-life balance. And I had that light bulb moment and went, aha, there's an idea here.
So essentially that's the big idea behind Pride Road. So up until then you were running your practice Rains Architecture, and before that, tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm an architect with 19 years experience. I think we must have set up our business about the same time. And I worked in large companies. I've worked for Ian Simpson, Urban Splash, Halliday Meacham, predominantly in the residential and commercial sector. And every time I took time out to have a child, it started to hinder my career.
So you saw there's a greater need to being just an architect. You mentioned to me before about a book you read that was the inspiration for this, essentially putting together the idea of being an architect but also a businesswoman.
That's right.
This is your light bulb moment.
That's right. I was so excited about setting up my own practice. I was searching around for inspiration and asking people for business books, recommends, and I was recommended Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited. And what he talks about is the idea that I think the myth of the entrepreneur, that if you have a technical skill in something, that then you can make a business out of it. So, I'm a fully trained, qualified architect, then can you make a business out of it? Well, he starts talking about a pie shop where there's this woman who makes the most fantastic pies, and then she goes out to set up a little shop, and the shop becomes really successful to a point. It becomes so successful, it becomes a victim of its own success because she can't keep up with supply, she starts disappointing her customers. So it's what happens after that. So the idea of the E-Myth Revisited is actually you need to start putting in those business systems to drive the business forward.
So it's not enough to be an architect, you've got to be a businesswoman as well. So how did you learn those skills?
I guess I picked the skills up as I went along. When I was on mat leave and I noticed my colleagues climbing the career ladder, I thought I'd have to step into business development and marketing. So I started doing that. I went into Women in Property. I joined the organisation and then targeted the chair role of the local Northwest branch. So before long, I was chair of the Women in Property Northwest branch, and that gave me a real insight into marketing, event running, PR as well, and also actually gave me a really good platform from which to start promoting the current business that I was in. And in fact, during that time, I ended up setting up Rains Architecture, and I had a fantastic platform to start talking about that.
So would you say it's an important thing for architect practices to understand marketing?
Absolutely. When I first set up Rains Architecture, I guess I was winging it to start off with, but I seemed to pick things up pretty well. I started in the social media boom, built my own website, drove traffic to the website, and I seemed to settle on a platform of working with domestic homeowners. And as a model, that's worked really well for me. Now with the Pride Road, I realised I needed to give it some serious welly behind it, and be much more structured about it, and which is why I came and sought some professional help.
That's when you came and talked to us.
Yes.
We often talk about a simple 5-step model that can be used in any business really, but in this case more bespoke for architects, that you can go through to understand what you need to do and when, etc. That was the model we went through together on Pride Road. But before we get on to that, when you say you learned something about marketing on the hoof, was that from books, or where did you start to pick up your knowledge? Because it's quite clear you understood quite a bit about the terminology before we met.
I guess when I first launched myself into running my own business, I was out there networking, accessing little groups, and there's a lot of general advice out there about marketing. So you just become aware of it, especially with the social media and the web. So as I say, I managed to wing it for quite a while.
We're showing a model with this video, which explains this quite simply, and it'll be on quite a bit. But if we start out with step one, when you came to us, you had a great business idea, you had a successful architectural practice in a particular area. So it's about finding a niche and exploiting that niche within a market. That was the process you ended up with.
That's right. So I've ended up working in the domestic residential sector. Relatively low value projects, not for the homeowners, but in terms of architectural fees it is. And it was a market, it worked very well with my business. It relies on having lots of projects come through rather than waiting for a medium or a large size project. So it meant that my cash flow was much more predictable. So if one client pulls the plug on a job, you're not all of a sudden left with 2-3 members of staff to pay for and no money coming in. With the domestic small end of the sector, it's much more level. So you can predict when you're going to go on holiday, how many staff you're going to need, if any, and it's for me to maintain that work-life balance. It's a sector that works really well.
And of course, the model works particularly well for female architects in particular, although not exclusively, obviously, in being flexible around other aspects of your life. So that effectively was what your business model and the niche you wanted to operate within.
That's right. And if you break down my business closely, I've got a simple 4-step offer that I give to clients, starting with a prospect meeting, then a concept design workshop before it goes into a full project. And it's all about managing clients' expectations.
And of course that model applies anywhere, so it's a scalable model and therefore potentially a franchise business.
Absolutely.
Because you're saying the same thing wherever you are in the country.
That's right. So with my business systems behind it, we know our numbers. We know what conversion rates are from inquiries through to prospects, prospects through to workshops, workshops through to live projects, so that you know that if you want to bring in a certain income, you need to be going out and getting XYZ inquiries.
The second step, we talk about how the business fits into a market context. In other words, your competitor set. So who would you say is your competitor set?
Well, I first looked around to see if there were any other architectural franchise businesses, and there were, but they seemed to be slightly higher value projects, and so actually didn't really come into the northwest. So that was the first one. But then obviously there's other solo practitioners out there who are in the same market, although probably a slightly higher value level. I think actually ultimately we're challenging draftsmen and architectural technicians and builders and surveyors and structural engineers who do some drawings on the side.
But what you're offering is a true architect experience with your clients, because one thing you told me was that they actually search for the word architect. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So, bit of a dichotomy there.
So where you add value is providing a real architect.
Yeah.
In quite a crowded marketplace.
Yeah.
When your competition is mostly not other architects.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think there's a common assumption out there amongst the general public that they don't understand what the term architect means. If they search for the term architect on the internet, they actually do get architectural technologists or people who provide architectural drawings, but they don't understand that word architect, that it's a protected term. So there is opportunity for someone in the marketplace like Pride Road to be found when someone's searching for architect in the local area.
Okay, so just recapping a little bit. Step one, you established a niche business idea. That's what we call positioning
Okay.
in the marketing business. And then step 2 was you looked at how your business idea, what the fit was within the competitive context. So you understood your idea, and then you understand the context and how you are different. That's another marketing term, is differentiation. As an interesting point, people think marketing is a complex business, and it can get complicated, but it's based on a very fundamental principle that there's only 2 ways to market any business, and that is price or differentiation. So if you're not different and offering something specific, then you're probably going to compete on price.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem that a lot of small architecture practices have, because they perhaps aren't sufficiently differentiated from their competition. Okay, in the second step, we talk about being different or differentiated.
Okay.
So what makes Pride Road different to other architect practices?
Pride Road is about being accessible to the layperson. It's about being able to talk to people who have no knowledge of the building industry, and being able to distill the process down simply and efficiently. And it's about managing expectation. And we do that from the outset with our website. So our website is a mine of information that educates and informs the client even before they pick up the phone.
So when you first approached us, you didn't have the brand Pride Road.
Mm-hmm.
So how did we end up with that name?
Well, I had the name Raw as a working title for a few years, which is ROAR, which actually stems from a kind of women's song. It was a song in the 1970s by Helen Reddy, which was "I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar."
I remember it well.
Yes, and for me it captured the idea of a woman taking charge of her own destiny, which is what I wanted to do with the architectural franchise. And so what we wanted to do was find a name that resonated with that thought, but actually had slightly more appeal. And you helped me through that process. So we started with the idea of pride, pride of lions. In fact, my logo's got a lioness on it. So it's about female animal working in a pride with support, actually being a very strong character. I think the female's the hunters. And it's I found other names that were associated with women to be it put women in the home and with the hearth, and they sounded just a little bit too patronising. I thought Pride was a very strong name for a female brand. And then also you've got the connotation with pride. We want our clients to have pride in their homes. And Road, we're on a journey. The client's on a journey. And Road is kind of an urban setting as well, so kind of puts architecture back into the title. So Pride Road.
Because it's a franchise, this brand needed to appeal to potential franchisees, other architects, but it also had to appeal to the consumer, your end consumer.
That's right.
That's what made it complicated, I guess.
Yes, it was quite complicated.
Complicated process.
Yeah, I think we got there in the end. Everyone loves the name.
Well, the logo for Pride Road is a road sign, effectively. And that's a very familiar symbol to anybody who lives on a street, avenue, throughout the UK. We even talked about a strapline, didn't we?
We did. So we've got architecture that's right up your street. So that ties back in with the journey and the road sign and the urban environment again. So I think it all works quite nicely.
And it does tell your end consumer exactly what they're going to get.
Mm.
Having established your brand
Mm-hmm.
and the logo and understanding your position in the market, so we've gone through the first 3 steps. The next step is to build your platform on how you're going to market yourself, the who, what, when, where and how. So could you explain a little bit about what that means in terms of a process?
Well, for ours, for Pride Road, it was slightly unusual because we're dealing with both the franchisee and the consumer as well. So we were looking at the 2 markets in parallel. So first of all, we're looking at targeting younger architects and how I'm going to get to that market. And then we're also looking at the consumer and how we're going to get there. Website for me is my main tool. So for me, it's about driving traffic to the website. And I do that through a number of ways.
How important is it that that website is kept very active and new and updated?
So my website's my shop. It's got to be kept fresh and interesting, not only for my consumers that are coming to me, but more importantly for Google and Google rankings. My aim is to be at the top of Google for architect in whatever location. So I've held a strong position in Manchester for quite a long time. Not necessarily at number 1, but on that first page. So if anyone searched for Architect Manchester, I was there. So the strategy for Pride Road is exactly the same. And you need a website with quality content and pictures and information to be able to do that.
Presumably you also need to have news and new content on an ongoing basis.
Yes, I need a blog platform because that's another way of driving traffic to my website. Then I've got content to talk about on social media. And obviously I've got case studies on the site, and people are always interested in having a look around my case studies and testimonials.
That's what we call in the trade an inbound strategy. In other words, people coming to you, you not advertising as such or broadcasting.
That's right. I learnt early on in my business that to limit the amount of speculative work that I did. So even taking out adverts in Checkatrade or going on one of those kind of search engine sites wasn't working for me. I needed people who, once they'd found my website, were ready to buy.
So this takes us to step 5, which is bringing the business to life, getting it out there, which is, as you said, primarily through your website and blog and other means. It can be a bit of a full-time job, this, can't it?
I'd say yes, definitely. It's taken over my life. Well, I've always been focused on my business, but yes, trying to think of different marketing avenues to build the website, whether it's through social media or Google advertising or blogs or PR, linking to, trying to get links in other people's websites, linking back to the website. Yes, it's definitely a full-time job. But because the business itself is systemised, I can still deliver my architectural product in the same way that I have been. So, would you like me to explain more?
Please do.
So, my business processes are relatively simple, and everything that I've got is systemised. So from an inquiry coming in, how I answer a telephone call, how I respond to the telephone call and make a booking an appointment, going to see a client, it's all structured. So you don't have to think about anything else apart from asking the client the right questions, filling out a form that I've very, very carefully designed over the 5 years, and then leading them into a concept design workshop. Once we do the concept design workshop, which is delivered in the same way, obviously the designs and the architectural solutions are different every time, and because all the clients are different and the properties are different, but still it's very heavily structured so that you know what your outputs are, you manage the client's expectations the whole way through, and then moving the client from completion of concept and converting them into a live project is also a series of steps.
So, would you say that architects, architectural practices need to explain the process by which they work more to their consumers? Because I work in the domestic sector, I have to educate my clients every time I go and see them. In other types of projects, in other types of sectors, architects are dealing with more experienced clients who are maybe on their second, third project and who are familiar with the architectural language, the different stages, different types of tendering process. So it's horses for courses, but what I've learnt is I never assume that anyone has any knowledge when they come to meet me. Even if they do work as a consultant in the property sector, they've not necessarily built anything for themselves before. And so someone's understanding of a planning system for a large retail multi-storey project is completely different to the planning process for, you know, a kind of single-storey extension on a house in somewhere. not wanting to name any locations. Somewhere in the UK. Yeah. So it's about educating people, and they do say, you know, genuinely, they do prefer it if I just start from scratch and explain the process to them, and I can explain timelines. Okay, so at the top of the interview, we talked about the simple processes of marketing. But I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask. First one, how much of your time do you think you actually spend marketing your business? A percentage?
It does vary depending on my tasks, but it easily 60% on client facing and project work, and the rest it could all probably be put into marketing. I mean, I started doing a lot of face-to-face marketing, networking, and then as my business evolved, it became more online marketing. And then that settles down a little bit, actually, because you can put a little bit less time in it. But recently, yeah, as we've gone into the launch of Pride Road, there's an awful lot going into the marketing.
And the second and final question is, how important do you believe marketing is to architect practices?
I think it's incredibly important. You need to make sure that you're working in the sector that you enjoy working in. There's no point in keeping going in a sector that is neither profitable nor enjoyable. And then once you've worked out which sector you want to work in, then get out and market to that.
Lisa Rains, thank you very much.
Pleasure.